In the farthest reaches of the galaxy, a great event was held every 100 years. It was called the Galactic Trials, a competition where the most powerful and intelligent species in the universe sent their best candidates. The trials were not just for show. They were designed by the Xyloth, an ancient and mysterious alien race that controlled knowledge and power. To the Xyloth, only the strongest, most brilliant, and most adaptable species could be trusted with the secrets of the universe. One of the species chosen to compete was humans. To the Xyloth, humanity was still new, wild, and full of potential. They were curious about what made humans different from the other species in the galaxy. So, they picked one human to represent Earth in the trials. His name was Geo***. Geo was not a warrior or a genius. He was a soldier, plain and simple. He didn't come from a wealthy family, nor did he have great special talents. He had spent most of his life fighting in small skirmishes, training and surviving. Geo was used to difficult situations, but he wasn't used to being the best. In fact, he had always thought of himself as just average. But this time, Geo had something to prove, not just to the Xyloth, but to everyone who had ever doubted him. Su-Min, on the other hand, was one of the brightest stars in the trials. She wasn't human, but she was chosen by the Xyloth because of her incredible abilities. Su-Min was part of an ancient alien race known as the Xylara, known for their speed, intelligence, and incredible adaptability. When she entered the trials, her confidence was unmatched. She moved quickly through each challenge, her sharp mind and fast reflexes making her seem unbeatable. The Xyloth watched her with great interest, as they had never seen such an extraordinary being. Despite the difference in their backgrounds, Geo and Su-Min shared one thing: a burning desire to prove themselves. But while Su-Min had confidence in her natural gifts, Geo had only his determination. The first few trials would test their mental strength, physical endurance, and ability to adapt. But Geo knew that if he was going to stand a chance, he had to give everything he had. There was no turning back. The trials began in an arena unlike any Geo had ever seen. The floor beneath him was made of smooth metallic panels that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was filled with a strange energy, and Geo could feel his heart racing as the other competitors prepared for the first challenge. They were all from different parts of the galaxy, and most of them looked far more advanced than he was. The aliens around him whispered among themselves, casting curious glances at the human who dared to stand among them. The first test was a simple one: survival. The competitors were placed in a dense jungle filled with dangerous creatures, traps, and obstacles. They had to navigate through it and reach the center of the jungle where a strange artifact waited. It was a challenge of endurance, strategy, and awareness. Geo had no illusions about the difficulty of the trial. As soon as the signal went off, the competitors dashed into the jungle. But Geo was careful. His mind worked faster than his body, calculating his path and watching for danger. He had learned to be patient in combat, and it served him well now. He didn't rush in blindly like some of the others. Instead, he moved cautiously, keeping his eyes on the trees above and the ground beneath. The first danger came quickly. The large, beast-like creature appeared from the underbrush, its sharp teeth glistening in the dim light. The other contestants froze, unsure how to react. But Geo didn't hesitate. He had faced danger before, and his training kicked in. He grabbed a nearby branch and used it to defend himself, driving the creature away. But as Geo made his way deeper into the jungle, he found that the real challenge wasn't the creatures. It was the environment itself. The jungle seemed to shift and change, and at every turn, he had to think quickly to avoid being trapped. He noticed that some of the other competitors were struggling, tripping into hidden holes or falling into ambushes set by the Xyloth. Meanwhile, Su-Min was already nearing the center. Her speed and agility allowed her to avoid the dangers that slowed the others. She was ahead of everyone, confident in her ability to complete the task. The Xyloth judges watched her closely, impressed by her natural skill. But they were also watching Jiho. They had seen his quick thinking earlier, but could he keep up with the rest of the aliens? As Jiho reached the heart of the jungle, he saw the artifact, shining in a clearing. It was not a weapon, but a simple orb, glowing with an ancient light. The challenge was never about brute force. It was about using the mind to overcome the odds. Jiho stood there for a moment, breathing heavily, as the other competitors closed in. He knew that this was only the beginning, but one thing was clear. Humanity had earned its place in the trials, and Jiho was not about to let them down. The first challenge had been a success for Jiho, though he had barely managed to stay ahead of the others. His mind was clear, and his instincts had helped him survive the jungle, but he knew that the hardest challenges were yet to come. As the second phase of the trials began, Jiho found himself facing an entirely new kind of test. The arena shifted again, this time transforming into a vast desert. The sky was a deep red, and the ground was hot, cracked, and dry. A harsh wind blew dust everywhere, making it hard to see. There was no shelter in sight, only endless dunes. The competitors were told that they had to reach the highest point of a distant mountain. The first to reach the top would win. Su-min, as expected, was already ahead. She had darted forward, moving with speed and precision, leaving Jiho behind. He could see her silhouette against the horizon, her alien grace giving her an edge that he didn't have. Jiho didn't have her speed or her advanced senses, but what he did have was patience. He knew that in the desert, speed alone wouldn't guarantee success. The sun was relentless, beating down on the participants, draining their energy. Many of the other competitors began to falter as the heat took its toll. The aliens from other planets, though strong and fast, were not used to such harsh conditions. Some of them stumbled, their energy fading. Jiho, on the other hand, moved steadily, finding his rhythm. He had been trained for endurance, not speed. He focused on each step, conserving his energy and keeping his eyes on Su-min, who was still far ahead. He noticed that she was not as fast as she had been in the jungle. The heat was starting to slow her down too. This gave Jiho hope. Hours passed, and the landscape began to change. The sand dunes became steeper, and the wind grew stronger, carrying the heat and dust in waves. Jiho adjusted his clothes to shield his skin from the sun and kept his mind on the task ahead. He didn't let the distance between him and Su-min discourage him. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his pace, his strategy, and his ability to adapt. Su-min, despite her natural abilities, was beginning to show signs of exhaustion. Jiho saw her pause for a moment to catch her breath. Her normally confident strides had slowed, and Jiho noticed a slight wobble in her movements. He knew that she was feeling the desert's unforgiving heat. This was his chance. With a burst of energy, Jiho quickened his pace, taking a route that avoided the toughest areas of the desert. He climbed a series of rocks that led him to a narrow path up the side of the mountain. It wasn't the most direct route, but it was safer. As he climbed, he could see Su-min ahead, still struggling to keep up her pace. At one point, Jiho came across an alien competitor, one of the insectoid species from the distant planet of Xerath. The creature had collapsed in the heat, its body unable to handle the extreme conditions. Jiho knelt beside it, offering a small amount of water from his pack. The insectoid creature looked at him with wide, grateful eyes. Jiho's gesture of kindness had earned him more respect than he realized. Even though he had no obligation to help, he chose to. This act didn't go unnoticed. The Axailoth judges observed the scene, and though they had expected nothing from a human, they saw something in Jiho that they hadn't expected: compassion. He had chosen to help an alien, even though it might cost him precious time. This made Jiho stand out among the others. Jiho continued his climb, and as he neared the summit, the wind howled louder, making it harder to keep his footing. His body ached, his muscles sore from the climb, but he refused to stop. With each step, he told himself that he had to push through, for his people, for Earth. He could feel the mountain growing steeper, and the top was almost in reach. Just as Geo reached the final stretch, he saw Su Min at the top of the mountain. She had beaten him, but only just. She was panting, her face covered in dust, her hair sticking to her forehead. For a moment, she looked as if she might collapse right there. Geo knew she had given everything she had to reach the top, but she looked drained. Geo took a deep breath, his legs trembling with exhaustion, but he was not far behind. He made the final climb, his fingers gripping the rocks tightly. With one last push, he pulled himself up to the summit. He stood beside Su Min, both of them gazing out at the view. The other competitors were still far below, struggling to reach the top. Su Min gave him a quick glance, her usual confidence now tempered by the reality of the trials. She had won this round, but Geo had earned something that was just as important: respect. He had shown that, even without the natural gifts the other aliens possessed, he could keep up and push through when it mattered most. The Tyloth judges looked down from their observation points, their ancient eyes focused on the human who had proven that even in a trial of speed, there was more to strength than just being fast. Geo had proven that persistence, patience, and the ability to adapt could take a person farther than raw talent alone. The second trial had tested Geo's endurance, and he had come through it better than anyone expected. Though Su Min had won, Geo had gained something just as valuable: experience. The Oxyloth judges were paying attention to him now, not just as a weak human, but as someone who had the strength to adapt. But the trials were far from over. The real challenge was only beginning. The third test was unlike anything Geo had faced before. The competitors were taken to a strange, shifting landscape, where the ground was not solid but constantly moved, like a giant puzzle. The challenge was to find and retrieve a rare crystal hidden in the heart of a massive maze. The maze was alive, shifting its paths and creating new challenges at every turn. The crystal was the key to completing the trial, and the first person to retrieve it would win. From the very start, Geo could feel the pressure. The maze was not only physically demanding, but it also tested the mind. Every turn seemed like it led to a dead end, and the walls constantly shifted around them, trapping the competitors in new sections. Geo could hear the others ahead of him, their footsteps echoing through the labyrinth, but no one seemed to be getting closer to the crystal. Su Min was ahead as usual, her speed giving her a huge advantage in this maze of confusion. Geo, however, was not used to relying on pure speed. He had to use his mind to get through. Every few minutes, the maze would twist, rearranging its walls, making it difficult to keep track of the path. Geo had learned to focus and think in these types of situations. His experience in battle had taught him how to stay calm when everything around him seemed chaotic. He'd noticed that some of the other competitors were already panicking, running in circles, unsure of which way to go. Geo kept his focus, knowing that losing his cool would only waste time. The walls shifted again, and Geo found himself facing a giant chasm. There was no way around it. He had to cross it. On the other side of the chasm, Geo could just make out the faint glow of the crystal. He knew that this was his moment. The only way to get across was a narrow bridge made of unstable stones. The bridge swayed in the wind, and Geo's heart raced as he carefully made his way across. Every step felt like it could be his last, but he pushed forward, determined to reach the crystal. Just as he reached the middle of the bridge, disaster struck. One of the stones cracked under his weight, and Geo stumbled. He quickly grabbed onto the edge of the bridge, but his body swung dangerously. His heart pounded in his chest as he hung there, struggling to pull himself up. Every second felt like an eternity. The other competitors, including Su Min, had reached the crystal, and it was only a matter of time before they would complete the trial. Geo knew that he had to act quickly or risk falling too far behind. With one final push, he managed to hoist himself up onto solid ground, gasping for breath. He had made it across the chasm, but he had lost precious time. Su Min, with her speed and precision, had already reached the crystal. She held it in her hands, a smile of victory on her face. Jiho watched her from a distance, his chest heavy with disappointment. He had come so close, but in the end, he had failed. His hands clenched into fists as he stood there, watching Su Min claim victory. The HFY judges observed silently from their high platforms, their cold, ancient eyes watching the human. Jiho felt their gaze, but he didn't care. He had failed. He had lost. The journey back from the maze was quiet. Jiho didn't speak to the other competitors. They were all too focused on their own performance, each one trying to hide their emotions. Jiho couldn't help but feel the weight of his failure. The other aliens, who had so much more natural talent, seemed so much better suited for the trials. He felt out of place, like a fish trying to swim with sharks. When they finally returned to the waiting area, Jiho collapsed onto the ground, his mind swirling with thoughts of the trials. Could he really keep up? Could he continue fighting against competitors who were so much stronger, faster, and smarter than him? He had come so far, but now doubt crept into his mind. Maybe he wasn't as good as he thought. Maybe he wasn't enough. Su Min approached him, her usual confidence now replaced with a soft expression. She stood in front of him, the crystal still in her hands. "You did your best," she said quietly, her voice gentle. "Don't give up just because of one loss. There are still more trials to come." Jiho looked up at her, his eyes filled with uncertainty. He didn't know if he could keep going. But Su Min's words, simple as they were, struck a chord in him. Maybe she was right. One failure didn't mean the end. He could still fight. He could still prove that humans had something no alien species could match. The trials were far from over, and Jiho knew that he could not afford to rest. The third challenge had been a setback, but he had learned something valuable. He knew that if he was going to make it through the next challenges, he would need to push past his doubts and keep moving forward. The next test would be the toughest yet. The HFY judges called the competitors together for the fourth and final challenge. The air around them crackled with energy as the arena shifted once again. This time, the landscape was unlike anything Jiho had ever seen. The ground beneath them was cracked and uneven, with massive rocks scattered across the surface. The sky above was dark and stormy, filled with swirling clouds that seemed to move with a mind of their own. In the center of the arena stood a giant structure, a tall tower of stone that reached high into the clouds. The challenge was simple: climb to the top of the tower and retrieve a glowing crystal that sat on a pedestal at the very peak. The first one to reach the top would win. But there was a catch. The tower was not a safe place. It was filled with dangerous obstacles, traps, and creatures. Every step up the tower would be a battle to survive. Jiho looked at the other competitors. Su Min was there, her face set in determination, but Jiho could see the exhaustion in her eyes. The trials had been hard on everyone, and the final challenge would not be easy for anyone. Jiho knew this would be his last chance to prove that humanity was capable of more than just survival. The signal was given, and the competitors rushed forward, eager to begin. The tower loomed ahead, its jagged edges casting long shadows across the ground. Jiho could feel the weight of the challenge pressing down on him, but he pushed the fear aside. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to give up now. The first part of the climb was the easiest. The ground was solid, and the walls of the tower were rough but climbable. Jiho found a foothold and began to scale the first section. The others were already ahead, their speed giving them an advantage. But Jiho kept a steady pace. He didn't need to rush. He knew that the real danger would come later. As Jiho climbed higher, the obstacles began to appear. Strange creatures with sharp claws and glowing eyes crawled out from the cracks in the tower. They hissed and screeched as they lunged at the competitors. Jiho narrowly avoided one, leaping to the side just in time. His heart raced, but he kept moving. The creatures were fast, but they were predictable. Jiho had learned to read their movements, and with each encounter, he grew more confident. But the creatures weren't the only danger. The tower itself seemed to fight back. Large stones fell from above, crashing to the ground with deafening noise. The walls trembled and shifted, creating new paths and dead ends. Jiho had to stay alert, using his surroundings to avoid the falling rocks and navigate the shifting terrain. Every step was a gamble, but Jiho kept his cool. He knew that panicking would only get him hurt. Sumin was still ahead of him, but Jiho could see that she was starting to slow down. The climb was taking a toll on her, just as it was on everyone else. She had the speed and skill to outpace the others, but the dangers of the tower were unlike anything they had faced before. Jiho could see that her usual confidence was wavering, and for the first time in the trials, she looked unsure of herself. Jiho pushed forward, his muscles burning with effort, but he refused to stop. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to fail now. As he neared the top of the tower, the final obstacle appeared. The crystal, glowing brightly on its pedestal, was just out of reach. But there was one last challenge. A massive, swirling storm of wind and lightning surrounded the pedestal. The winds were so strong that Jiho could barely stand against them, and the lightning crackled dangerously close. The storm was alive, trying to push him away. But Jiho didn't hesitate. He had faced worse odds before, and he knew that he had to trust himself. He took a deep breath, steadied his feet, and moved forward, carefully making his way through the storm. Every step felt like it could be his last, but he kept going. His body was exhausted, but his will was stronger than ever. He could see the glowing crystal just ahead, a symbol of everything he had fought for. With one final burst of strength, Jiho lunged toward the pedestal. The storm fought back with all its fury, but Jiho reached out and grabbed the crystal. The moment his fingers touched it, the storm stopped, and the arena fell silent. Jiho stood there, holding the crystal in his hands, breathing heavily but victorious. Sumin appeared beside him, a look of surprise on her face. She had made it to the top too, but Jiho had won. The HFY judges looked down at the two competitors, their eyes unreadable. But Jiho didn't care about their judgment. He had proven what he needed to prove. The HFY had come to see humanity as weak and insignificant, but Jiho had shown them that humans had something no alien species could match: determination, courage, and the will to fight. He had faced impossible odds and come out on top. And in doing so, he had earned humanity's place in the stars. Jiho stood at the top of the tower, the glowing crystal clutched tightly in his hand. His body was sore, his mind exhausted, but his heart raced with victory. He had made it through the hardest challenge of the trials, and he had earned the respect of the HFY and the other competitors. But there was something about the moment that didn't feel right. The HFY judges observed quietly from above, their ancient faces unreadable. Jiho glanced at Sumin, who stood beside him, staring at the crystal in his hand. She looked less like a competitor now and more like a weary traveler who had reached the end of a long journey. Despite her usual confidence, there was something in her eyes, a mix of admiration and something else, something Jiho couldn't quite place. The crystal pulsed in his hand, its light flickering as if it were alive. Jiho's fingers tightened around it, and for a moment, he felt a strange surge of energy, as though the crystal were trying to communicate with him. He could feel a deep, almost mystical connection to it, but he pushed the feeling aside. There was no time to think about it. He had won. He had proven himself. But then, a sudden voice echoed through the arena, cold and commanding. It was the voice of the HFY leader, who had watched the trials unfold from the highest platform. Jiho of Earth, the voice called, its tone filled with authority. You have completed the trials, but you have not won in the way you think. Jiho's heart skipped a beat. What did the leader mean? He had the crystal. He had climbed the tower, overcome the obstacles, and earned victory. What else could there be? Sumin stepped forward, her eyes wide with confusion. What do you mean we haven't won? She asked, her voice shaky. We made it to the top. We've completed the challenge. The HFY leader's voice responded, colder than before. The trials are not just tests of strength, speed, or endurance. They are tests of the heart. We have watched you all closely, and now it is time to reveal the truth. The ground beneath them rumbled, and the air grew heavy. The Zyloth judges, who had been silent until now, began to move. They hovered above the competitors, their glowing eyes fixed on Jiho. The arena itself seemed to shift, as if responding to the leader's command. The bright sky above dimmed, and strange symbols appeared in the air, swirling around the competitors. Jiho felt a chill run down his spine. Something was wrong. He had been so sure of his victory, but now doubt began to creep into his mind. He looked at the crystal in his hand once again, and this time it didn't feel like a simple prize. It felt more like a key to something bigger, something hidden. The leader's voice continued, its tone both menacing and fascinating. You have done well, Jiho. You have shown us that humans have strength and courage. But you have also shown us something else. The crystal you hold is not merely a prize. It is a key to a greater truth. A strange energy began to pulse from the crystal, and Jiho felt a surge of power run through his body. He stumbled, almost dropping the crystal, but he managed to keep his grip on it. The light from the crystal grew brighter, and the symbols in the air began to form patterns that Jiho recognized, though he couldn't understand them. Su-min stepped back, her face pale. What is this? She whispered, fear creeping into her voice. What are you telling us? The Zyloth leader's voice grew louder, more intense. This crystal, Jiho, is not just a tool of the trials. It is a key to the secrets of the universe. You have unlocked something far more powerful than you realize. The trials were not only a test of your strength. They were a test of your mind, your heart, and your ability to uncover the truth. Jiho's head spun. What was the leader talking about? He had always thought the trials were about proving his worth, showing that humans could stand alongside the galaxy's most powerful species. But now he realized there was more at play than he had ever imagined. The trials were only the beginning. The crystal, this strange object he had fought so hard to win, was connected to something far greater. The Zyloth leader spoke again, this time with a hint of something like respect in his voice. You have proven that humans are more than mere creatures of war. You are capable of uncovering truths that others cannot. The crystal you hold is a key to a hidden network, a network that connects all the galaxies in ways you cannot yet understand. But now, you are its keeper. Jiho's mind raced. He couldn't make sense of it all. He was just a soldier from Earth, not a scholar or an expert in alien technology. And yet, the Zyloth were giving him the responsibility of something that could change the fate of the universe. What am I supposed to do with this? Jiho asked, his voice shaky. The Zyloth leader's response was simple, yet filled with meaning. You must learn. You must unlock the secrets of the crystal. You are no longer just a competitor in the trials. You are now a key figure in the future of all life. Su-min stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. And what about us? She asked, her voice strong. What happens to those of us who have completed the trials? The Zyloth leader's eyes gleamed. You too have a part to play. But for now, Jiho of Earth is the one who holds the key. The galaxy's future depends on what you do next. Jiho stood frozen, the weight of the crystal in his hand suddenly feeling much heavier. The trials were over, but his real journey was just beginning. Jiho stood frozen, still holding the crystal. The words of the Zyloth leader echoed in his mind. He had never imagined that his victory in the trials would lead to this. He had thought the trials were just about proving himself, but now he realized it was something much more. The Zyloth leader's cold eyes watched him closely, waiting for a response. Jiho didn't know what to say. He was just a human from Earth. What could he possibly do with a crystal that held the fate of the entire galaxy? But the weight of the responsibility felt real. And Jiho knew that this was no ordinary prize. The crystal was a key to something far beyond what he had ever imagined. Su-min, standing beside him, looked just as confused and worried as he felt. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced with uncertainty. She had been with him through the trials, but now she seemed lost in this new, strange world. Jiho could see the same doubt in her eyes that he felt deep in his chest. What did all this mean? What was expected of them now? The Psyloph leader's voice cut through the silence. You have been chosen, Jiho. The crystal is a key to an ancient network, one that connects the entire galaxy. It is a power beyond your understanding. You must learn how to unlock it, and in doing so, you will uncover secrets that could change the future of all life. Jiho looked down at the crystal once more. It was glowing softly in his hand, the light pulsating in time with his heartbeat. The crystal wasn't just a simple prize. It was something far more important, and now it was his to protect. What do you mean, unlock it? Joe asked, his voice filled with confusion. How am I supposed to do that? I'm just a human. The Psyloph leader's eyes narrowed slightly. That is the challenge, Jiho of Earth. You are the one chosen to unlock the secrets of the crystal. You must seek out the knowledge that lies hidden within it, but you are not alone. Others will come to help you, but you must find your own path. The galaxy will not wait. The leader's words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Jiho felt as if the weight of the galaxy had been placed on his shoulders. He couldn't ignore the responsibility that came with the crystal. But how was he supposed to begin? He had no training in alien technology or ancient secrets. He was just a soldier. He had fought in battles, but this was something completely different. He wasn't sure he was ready for this kind of responsibility. Su-min stepped closer to him, her expression serious. You can do this, Jiho. You've proven yourself in the trials. You've shown that you're capable of more than anyone thought. Don't let fear hold you back. Her words gave him a little comfort, but Jiho still felt a deep uncertainty. Su-min was right, though. He had come this far, and there was no turning back now. The trials were over, but his real journey had just begun. The Psyloph leader seemed to sense Jiho's doubt and gave a slight nod. The first step in your journey is to leave this place. You must find the hidden locations where the network is stored. There are others who will try to stop you, but you must be strong. Trust the crystal, and trust yourself. Jiho nodded, though he still wasn't sure what to expect. The trials had been hard, but this was something completely different. The future of the galaxy rested in his hands, and Jiho had no idea where to begin. Before Jiho could ask more questions, the Psyloph leader turned and began to float away. The other judges followed, their eyes still fixed on him. The arena was silent once again, leaving Jiho and Su-min alone. Su-min looked at Jiho, her face showing a mixture of fear and determination. We need to figure this out, Jiho. Whatever this crystal is, it's important. We can't let the Psyloph, or anyone, take it from us. Jiho nodded again, but his mind was still racing. The galaxy, secrets, hidden networks. He had no idea what any of it meant, but he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't do this alone. He needed help, and he needed to learn more about the crystal. Su-min placed a hand on his shoulder, offering a quiet reassurance. We'll figure it out. We've made it this far. Now we just have to keep going. Jiho gave her a small smile. Thanks, Su-min. I don't know what's ahead, but I'll face it. I won't back down. Together, the two of them walked away from the arena, the crystal still glowing in Jiho's hand. The journey ahead was uncertain, filled with dangers and mysteries that neither of them could predict. But one thing was clear. They were no longer just competitors in the trials. They were now part of something much larger, something that could change the fate of the entire galaxy. The adventure had only just begun. The journey ahead was uncertain, and Jiho couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed in the blink of an eye. The Psyloph had given him a task that felt far too big for him to handle, but he couldn't back out now. He had the crystal in his hand, the key to something beyond his understanding. He had to find out what it really meant. Jiho and Su-min walked through the vast, empty arena. The towering walls, once filled with the roar of the crowd and the energy of the trials, were now silent. The strange symbols that had appeared earlier still floated in the air, but they no longer held any meaning to Jiho. They were just symbols now, a reminder of what had happened and what was to come. "We need to figure out where to go next," Jiho said, his voice low as he glanced at the crystal in his hand. The light from the crystal had dimmed, but it still pulsed gently, as if urging him forward. Su-min nodded, her expression thoughtful. "The Tyloth said the crystal was a key to an ancient network. But what does that mean? Where do we even start looking?" Jiho's mind raced. There had to be something, somewhere, that held the answers they needed. But the Tyloth had given them no clear instructions. All they had was the crystal and their own determination. "We could go to the nearest space station," Jiho suggested. "Maybe we can find someone who knows about the ancient network, someone who understands more than we do." Su-min thought for a moment before agreeing. "It's a good idea. We need help. We can't do this alone. The galaxy is so big, and we don't know where to start looking for this hidden network." Jiho nodded, his mind still focused on the task ahead. "We'll figure it out, but we need to be careful. The Tyloth said there would be others who would try to stop us. We can't let our guard down." Su-min's eyes darkened. "Yeah, we've already seen how dangerous the galaxy can be. The Tyloth weren't the only ones watching us in the trials. There are others out there who want the crystal, and they won't hesitate to take it from us." Jiho clenched his fist around the crystal. He didn't want to think about the dangers that awaited them, but he knew they couldn't avoid it. The crystal was powerful, and others would stop at nothing to get it. "Let's get to the space station and gather as much information as we can," Jiho said, his voice steady. "We need to learn about this ancient network and what the Tyloth really want." Su-min gave him a determined look. "Agreed. We'll figure this out together, Jiho." They made their way to the nearest shuttle, a small craft that would take them to a nearby space station. The journey was quiet, the hum of the engines the only sound between them. Jiho couldn't stop thinking about the Tyloth leader's words. The crystal was more than just a prize. It was a key to something ancient, something that could change the galaxy. But what was that secret? And who else was out there looking for it? As the shuttle approached the space station, Jiho's thoughts turned to Earth. He had been away for so long, and he wasn't sure what he would find when he returned. The galaxy had changed him, and he knew that whatever he discovered next would change everything. But Earth was home, and he couldn't forget that. Whatever he had to do, he would do it for his people. The shuttle docked with the space station, and Jiho and Su-min stepped out into the bustling station. It was a place filled with all kinds of beings, humans, aliens, and everything in between. The station was a hub for trade, travel, and information, and Jiho hoped they could find someone who could help them understand the crystal and its secrets. They made their way to the station's central information hub, where large screens displayed news from across the galaxy. Jiho's eyes scanned the information, looking for anything that could give them a clue. There were stories about war, political unrest, and strange phenomena happening across the stars. But nothing about the crystal or the ancient network stood out. "This is going to be harder than we thought," Su-min said, her voice tinged with frustration. Jiho sighed but didn't let it discourage him. They had taken the first step, and now they needed to keep going. He had the crystal, and it was the only lead they had. "We'll keep looking," Jiho said firmly. "Someone out there knows something about this. We just have to find them." As they continued to search for answers, Jiho couldn't help but feel that their adventure had only just begun. The galaxy was full of mysteries, and they had stumbled onto one of the biggest. The crystal was a key, but to what? Jiho didn't know yet, but he was determined to find out. And with Su-min by his side, He knew that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were no longer just participants in a game. They were part of something much bigger. The fate of the galaxy was in their hands, and they wouldn't stop until they unlocked the secrets of the crystal.